I was prepared to speak about it, of course. I worked and prepared the problem of ethics in the sciences, the relationship between ethics and science. Can science be ethical? Is it supposed to be? But then really we assisted to marvelous, brilliant presentations on physics, chemistry, biology, that I forgot that I was supposed to speak. Now, really, David, you asked questions that belong to philosophy, and I'm a student of philosophy. In the beginning, I had actually thought of studying music for a very simple reason, not because I love music, but also because music has never produced war. Only words produced war. And I was so afraid of words, I said, why not study music, become a conductor? But then I chose philosophy because of the questions, and I almost left it because of the answers. Now, the questions that you asked, and all of you asked actually, they are there, but as answers in mysticism. All of the things that you heard have been approached, studied, communicated, sometimes without words, but in mysticism. The origin of the universe, the darkness, it's all there. The end of times even, it's a mysticism. Now, you scientists, whom I admire, of course you gave us a view of how the universe is being built. But there is one thing that you all actually, I think, willingly or not, or consciously or not, you forgot is why? Why is there a universe? Again, in mysticism we know why God created the world. As for ethics, is the universe concerned with ethics? Are all of these electrons and molecules, are they concerned with ethics? Jean-Marie showed us a marvelous picture of our grandmother Eve after she ate the forbidden fruit. But then actually, that was the beginning of what? It was the beginning of good and evil. That is the Bible. The Bible says at that moment Adam and Eve realized that there is a difference between good and evil, and they knew the difference. Do we? In the universe, in this huge universe, my God, billions of years, 17 billions, 300 millions, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all of a sudden the universe was born. Hegel already asked the question, actually, what did God do before? What do we do after? But that is an ethical question. So the lecture I was going to give you, I'll give it to you another time, President Apoloik. I will only tell you how I came about it. I'm also a student of history. I love history. And because of my background, I come from a Talmudic background, from a Hasidic background. In the Talmud, the question that is there all the time is what we call Maika Mashmalan. What does it mean? Okay, there is a universe. What does it mean? There is darkness. What does it mean? What is the meaning of the universe? Second, we in the Jewish tradition have always been hesitant to love history. We didn't fare well with history. The early historians that we had was Flavius, Josephus Flavius, and we didn't like him because he was too close to the Romans. He was a general, a brilliant general. And then he was seduced after he became a prisoner of war. He was seduced by the luxury, by the power of Rome. And he became a spokesman of Rome to the Jews, rather than being a spokesman of the Jews to Rome. And therefore we didn't study him. Now he's coming back. Then we had Gratz, Heinrich Gratz in Germany, Wissenschaft des Judentums. But I didn't like him because he hated Hasidism. Literally, he hated it. I don't like him. There was one historian, recent one, who did do justice to Hasidism. His name was Simon Dubnow. I love him. because he loves Hasidism. And one day I had to do something about him and study, and I went to the Encyclopedia Judaica, and I found that Shimon Dubnow was born there and so forth. He taught in Germany, and then he came to Latvia, to Riga. He was in the ghetto, and on December 7th or December 9th, in Riga, 1941, he was killed. He was killed by a former student. And that was it. What kind of student? Why? So I began working on that. And I went through all the sources, a lot of them. And finally I discovered he was killed by the head of the Gestapo in Riga. And that head of the Gestapo, named Dr. Johann Sieber, had been his student. And then I found out that the Johann Sieber would come to the ghetto just to taunt him, to ridicule him. Professor, are you still a humanist? He said, yes. Do you still believe in the human condition? Yes, said Dubnow. And then Sieber said, last week we executed, with me included, we executed, gave a number, 700 Jews and so forth. Do you still believe in the human nature? And Dubnow took out a pen, his pencil, a paper. How many Jews did you say? He remained a historian to the end. And I was thinking, my God, Johann Sieber had a doctorate. To have a doctorate in Germany in those times, in German universities, was much more difficult than in America or even in Israel. So what happened? Education was no shield. Culture did not stop him from doing what he did. And then in my studies, I discovered terrible things. We know that in history, occasionally, winds of madness could erupt. The Crusades were madness, absolutely madness. The Inquisition was madness. In a certain way, even Hitler and this final solution, it was madness. And today, if we are not very careful, with fanaticism reigning in the world, with fanaticism gaining power in certain places, it could be madness, destructive madness. The same thing could happen to science. Science could simply lose its ethical compass. I discovered, again from you, I'm sure you have too, the first to join, actually, from the professional field, Hitler's Nazi programs were the physicians. They did it. The euthanasia, the Gnadetod, euthanasia, was performed by medical doctors. Then, of course, we discovered what they have done in the concentration camps, the experiments. Mengele was only one. They were professors of medicine who did that without anesthesia, just using people for experiments, thinking that they were doing something good for humanity. Which, by the way, offers us an ethical dilemma. I was asked years ago, suppose out of those experiments something good occurred, and some things I think happened, some good results were obtained. Should we use them? In the legal field, you know, you cannot use documents obtained illegally because it's like taking fruit from a poison tree. What about science? So therefore, I became involved in Dubnow. And because of Dubnow, I was thinking to speak about science and ethics today to you, but really feeling that it's so late for you, for me, for everybody, another time, because it was so brilliant. I learned so much today, more than in my entire life. But I'll only give you what I found. Dubnov, we know, was in the ghetto. And again, I have it from documents. And he was writing a history of the Jewish people, but he didn't finish it. And he was going to write his final chapter in the ghetto. But it vanished. We don't know where it is. And I'm sure it's there, somewhere. Just like the Ringelblum diaries, we found them in milk cans in Warsaw. And other for the Sonderkommandos in Birkenau. We found them. One day we will find it. But here is what I found also. In the last volume that he had published, the very last, he writes, it's a very short text, and he says, at the end of my life, I would like to return to my native town in White Russia. I had not seen it for some 30 years. I would like to go to the cemetery, visit the grave of my grandfather, the great Rabbi Ben Zion, and whisper to him, it's me, your grandson, Shimon. I came here at the age which was yours when you left this world. Do you remember my rebellion against Judaism? My hostility towards all things you considered sacred? Do you recall it? Your sadness when I left you and your way of life? Do you remember it, grandfather? You told me then that one day I will return to the source which I had neglected while seeing in Judaism a caricature. Do you remember it, grandfather? Well, Rabbi Ben Zion, grandfather, look, your prophecy has been accomplished. I returned. But he has not. He was killed in the ghetto because he had a student who had a doctorate called Dr. Johann Siebert. And therefore, my good colleagues, remember, science alone, with all the greatness it has, and it has greatness, with all the depth it contains, and it does contain depth, with all the vision which is yours of the universe and its galaxies, remember that the mystery of the human being is in the galaxies, but even more so in the human heart. Thank you.